Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and here is a Treebeard Gracious Host Life Gain deck. This deck comes to us from Hobo, who says what needs to be worked on is more consistency, life gain, I think, and more ramp. And then when it comes to budget, they say no card being more than 50-ish or CEDH expensive. We have a few more expensive cards that I will suggest, but they're kind of the top of the line of life gain strategies. And we'll suggest a lot more, much cheaper to begin with. So before we get any further, as always, this deck list is in the video description below. And if you're looking for a life gain deck, I really like Treebeard, so this might be a good, deck to take a look at to get some ideas going. There is also in the video description a link for you to submit your own deck lists if you'd like me to take a look at them, and a link if you'd like me to look at your deck list next in line. There's a link to bring your deck to the front of the line. All right, Treebeard, Gracious Host. What does he do, and why are we using him as our life gain commander? Well, Treebeard is a 4-mana 0/5 white-green tree folk. He has Trample, Ward 2. When he enters the battlefield, you create 2 food tokens, and then when you gain life, you put that many +1/+1 counters on target halfling or tree folk. That's a lot of text. Honestly, I really like Treebeard. Treebeard does a lot of things for a life gain deck, is at a reasonable cost, is probably what we would consider to be a, how do I put this, a Voltron style life gain commander, while still having having the two kind of features we really want in that. The first one is that he comes with trample. That's really big. Though we're gonna have a few other things to interact with that. Him having trample off the start from the start is really nice. Also, Ward 2. I think a lot of people underestimate the power of Ward, and though Ward 2 is nothing like, Saruman or Sauron's Ward from the Lord of the Rings sets, Ward 2 is still pretty good. It can still stop a few things here and there, and finally, with Treebeard having a really high toughness to begin with, and the sheer number of +1/+1 counters we're going to be putting on him, it's really important to consider him like almost immune to red removal most of the time, because Blasphemous Act won't be able to kill him, for example. So the plan here is pretty straightforward. We're going to play a life gain kind of setup where Treebeard will grow himself, a halfling, or a tree folk. But we don't have a lot of halflings. We have a few, and I think they're fine. I think the main game plan should be Treebeard, and if we want to grow the rest of our team, there are other options to do so. If we look down here very quickly, we can see we've got a curve that kind of goes in the direction I really like, lots of 1-drops, and then curves downward. We do have a fair amount of 4-drops, a very large amount, and we're going to get back to these in a bit. But first, before we go any further, I want to talk about life gain, and I want to talk about some thoughts of this deck and general ideas. Now, some of these, I've been kind of on the side working on a few videos that are going to deal with some of the, how do I put it, the ways I look at these cards and some of the terms I'm going to be using, but I'll give a shorter version here. Now, life gain has a few problems to it. Life gain can be tough because intrinsically, life gain doesn't do anything, right? If I gain 5 life in a game of Commander, what have I done? Well, I've buffered my life total, so it's a little harder to knock me out of the game. Or you could kind of see it as I've prevented an attack. You've attacked me for 5, I've gained 5 life, we're kind of neutral in a way. The thing is, it's not that neutral, right? Because that creature is still on the battlefield, it can still attack again. So the only time life gain kind of negates something for sure is if you try to hit me with a lightning bolt and I use like a healing salve or something like that to gain 3 life preemptively. I have neutralized your card by spending 1 card to stop it. But that doesn't really work in Commander because in Commander, the sheer volume of damage that's being thrown around often will kind of negate the lifelink in a way that's just like, let me give you an example. In one-on-one, you might be taken down by 4/4s, by 3/3s, a pile of 2/2s, or one really big creature. But in Commander, it's regular that your opponents are summoning creatures that are 6/6s, 7/7s, 8/8s, right? You're up against a dragon deck, you're up against a slivers deck, you're up against any like combat-based deck, the creatures are going to be really, really large. So if you want to be able to negate that, you have to be consistently gaining just absolute, absolute tons of life. But as you're gaining life and spending resources gaining life, your opponents are basically growing their boards and they're going to just match the amount of life you gain. Unless you have an infinite life combo. For example, my Eiley deck used to be able to do that. Any life you gain outside of like 1,000,000 life is going to be caught up with by damage. So, all that to say, don't play a life gain deck to gain life. I know that seems strange, but think about like energy tokens, right? Or energy counters, I guess. Energy counters are a mechanic that give you a resource that you then spend to do other things. And life gain is like that. Now, we're not in black, so we can't pay the life. What we can do is use this life gain to trigger things, such as Treebeard. Now, Treebeard is specific because his life gain comes from the amount of life, but we also should look at things that just trigger when we gain life at all, right? And when we do that, we're going to have to be a little picky on our methods of life gain. So, all of that to kind of sum up the idea that life gain is tricky to build, life gain by itself doesn't do much, and therefore we need to be picky about how our life gain works. The reason I bring this up is because we have cards like Feed the Clan in this deck. I don't know to what degree this deck has been built off of EDH Rec. I don't want to make that assumption that it was just purely built off EDH Rec, but it's got a lot of telltale signs. One of the telltale signs, and this is what I was talking about as terms I'll kind of go into, is that EDH Rec has a lot of win more cards in it. What's win more? Well, a win more card only works when you are ahead. And in Commander, win more cards have a second definition where it's a card that's only good with your commander out. Feed the Clan is not a good card, right? It gives 5 life or 10 life. Now, you don't want this at all without your commander, but with your commander, it becomes, wow, put 10 plus 1 counters onto Treebeard. That seems pretty good. But is it though, right? Like life gain is the easiest thing your deck does, and you have a lot of ways to consistently gain life. In fact, if you think about Treebeard coming out with 2 food tokens, that's 6 life right there. And this is 10 life, so it's more. And the food tokens take 2 mana each, plus the mana for Treebeard. Like, I can see why this is super mana efficient to cast this spell. But once you cast a spell, it's gone, right? You've spent a whole card on it. And you still need to keep Treebeard around, which is already the main problem of your deck, is if Treebeard goes down, your deck kind of does nothing. And so to look at this card and say, wow, it does so, like, it gives so many +1/+1 counters. Whereas, Treebeard himself creates almost half or more of those counters in a way that you still get to keep Treebeard and like it works with a lot of other things. I don't like this. I get what the idea is. A card like this is used with Treebeard. You attack, you gain 10 life, hopefully you hit 21 damage and you take an opponent out. However, this is like the tactic your opponents are just the most prepared for, right? When you put Treebeard onto the battlefield, everyone is aware about how fast Treebeard is going to grow. The other life gain cards, the majority of your creatures, Essence Warden, Soul Attendant, are much, much better for growing Treebeard because you invest 1 mana and it just stays there. And during that time, from the moment you play Treebeard for every turn cycle, Treebeard will be growing and growing and growing, and you will not have to be holding up mana for like Feed the Clan or holding up or like consistently paying mana to do other things. You're just going to have a great time. So, all this to say, I really do feel like we are playing far, far too many straight up life gain cards. Let's do a quick breakdown and then we'll move on to a few other cards I don't like and then we'll move forward. So, Intervention Pack. Intervention Pack is 3 mana to basically fog an attack and gain the life. And it's not fogging a full attack, it is fogging one creature. So Intervention Pack does not stop a giant army of creatures defeating you. What it does is it prevents one creature or one source of damage from knocking you out. But the thing is that's not the only use of it here, and I do understand that you can pick like a non-lethal threat and turn that into +1/+1 counters to Treebeard. But how much mana would you pay for this effect, right? It's 3 mana, right? It's 3 mana on your next turn. It's 1 white. How much life would you have to be gaining for this to be worthwhile? And if you ask me, if I had this spell, how much life would I want it to gain? I would have to say 20 or more, because otherwise I don't really think it's that good. In fact, I think I would want it to be 21 life so that Treebeard is instantly, in the range of starting to be lethal because your opponents can block him, instantly starting to be lethal, right? And with that in mind, that's how much life I want to gain. But that's not going to happen. It's very, very rare to gain that amount of power from this one card. And in fact, you're going to be hard pressed to know when to cast this because you're going to be sitting there thinking, do I cast this now? Do I cast this later? Every time you get attacked, you have to look and think, is this the time to use Intervention Pack? And at the same time, is it worth like time walking yourself in the next turn? And by that I mean like you're just draining 3 of your mana for the next turn. This is just not the card this deck wants. There's almost no decks in Commander that really want this. You have to have a friend who really likes Blightsteel Colossus for this to be good. Otherwise, it is just a bad card, unfortunately. Ostrike, like, it's so funny that it's right beside Ostrike because Ostrike is just infinitely better because it's just 1 mana. Even though you might be like, but Cursed, Intervention Pact is 0 mana. You and I both know it's not actually 0 mana. You have to make it you have to pay 3 on the next turn. So Ostrike is just infinitely better. And I don't like Ostrike, you know? I want this just to be Fog. Just play Fog because Fog will actually keep you alive. Whereas Ostrike is not gonna stop that, right? Like it's not gonna do anything. And so even with the life gain, I just want fog. Don't play this. Don't play just life gain effects. Even with the prevention, it's still not worth it. Fortifying Drought. I like Fortifying Drought at least because it has a secondary effect, so you're not just using for life gain, so that's fine. Vigorous Charge. Vigorous Charge feels weird. Our commander already has Trample, and if I'm giving these cards Trample, I would like to give it Trample in another way. Same with Lifelink. Like, I would like it to be permanent. I see you're already playing Basilisk Caller. I don't see a need to play Vigorous Charge, which just gets used once. And is 2 mana for an effect that, as we can see, 2 mana and 2. It's actually 3 mana, but it stays on. I just like Basilisk Caller a lot more. Feed the Clan I've talked about. Sheltering Word. I feel like we can have a few more. I think Tyvar's. I should look it up actually. I think just play Tyvar's Stand instead. You'll just be happier. Because Vigorous Char. Where is it? Sheltering Word. Oh, because it gains life, is that's where it is. Ah, yeah, I should have seen that coming. Okay, yeah, I think that's fine. Once again, it's not just life gain, so I don't mind it as much. Soul's Grace just gains life. You don't want this card. You do not want this card when it just gains life. Also, you're going to feel really, really silly when the only creature you have is Treebeard. Now, this triggers off of your opponent's creatures, but otherwise, it's just life gain. Don't play just life gain. Entish Restoration is good. Predator's Report. Same thing. Predator's Rapport is just life gain. Don't play just life gain. So this as well will take out. Pulse Morasa, I'm willing to, because it's not just life gain, I think it's fine. You go neutral on cards. I think that's good. Riot Control is a fog. Once again, it doesn't just gain life, so I like it, but 3 mana is a lot for a fog. This deck doesn't really want to hold up mana, so I don't know how much I like it. I would rather it not be here, but it's not the worst. It's fine. Congregate, it's just life gain. Don't play just life gain, and it's the same mana as your commander. You don't want cards that are the same mana as your commander, so don't play that. War Report is just life gain. Don't play just life gain. Beacon of Immortality is just life gain. Don't play just life gain. I feel like a broken record, and I want to be clear. I'm not just dumping on this deck. I think this urge to put these cards in is really, really common. It makes sense. It's like, what is it? Is when a Duran player plays tower, is it tower defense? Uh, Creatures you control, yeah, it is tower defense. Creatures you control get 0/5 and gain reach. And they look at that with Doran, who says your creatures deal toughness instead of power, and they go, oh, perfect, and put it together. But if you don't have Doran, it does nothing. And without Treebeard or a few of your support cards, just straight up life gain does nothing, right? It just puts you in a position to be defeated with an extra turn. Now, I will say really, really briefly, one defense of this kind of strategy is that when you have 200 life, your opponents kind of give up on attacking you and they'll just take you at last. But that doesn't always guarantee you a win or put you in an advantageous position because once you come down to the last two players, your opponent has like 20 power of creatures and they're just they don't need to keep building their board anymore. They're just going to keep removing your creatures like Treebeard over and over again. You're still going to lose. It's going to take longer, but you're still going to lose. So, though there is the soft political power of having a lot of life in this game, it's really not that good. You want to be doing things with your life, and if you have life gain cards, you want them to trigger off of permanence, or you want them to repeatedly like you just don't want it to be on a card that does nothing else. You want it to do something else with it. So we have a lot of instants we can cut, which is really, really nice. I'm going to look at a few more that kind of stand out to me. I feel like you could probably get away with playing, because you do have a lot of ramp, but playing one more ramp card, I think you'd be fine. 32 lands is really low, so you can put a few more lands into here. And I'm going to be honest, you are playing a lot of basics. I think you could play a lot more non-basics. I mean, honestly, just look for any land that taps for green and white, even if it comes in tapped, and play a few more of those. You are you're just very high on non-basics. But when it comes to the amount of lands, I think you should go to at least 30, at least 35. You do have a lot of ramp, but 32 is really, really low. You have a 4 mana commander, and some of your coolest cards are higher mana. All right, looking along, Boon Reflection is another one I'm kind of iffy about. This one is better because, once again, it is a permanent and it doubles all your life, so it can work really well in Treebeard, but it doesn't do anything by itself, so I'm a little wary of it. I would say this is good sometimes, and other times it's not so great. And I'll say keep it in, but just be careful. Assemble the Entmoot. Okay, I can see why this could be really, really good. It's at 4 mana. Okay, it's 3 Tree Folk for the life you gain. This can be really good, or this can just be okay. I think a lot of things have to go in your like. Okay, so I look at Assemble the Entmoot, and I see the thought of, well, well, Cursed, this is why these cards are in here. Yeah, but like you don't want to spend multiple cards for this effect. Assemble the Entmoot is really, really good when you play it. Give Treebeard Basilisk Collar, attack once, sacrifice it, and then get a bunch of creatures. It's not really good when you spend extra cards to get this effect going. The other thing is it is 4 mana, which I don't really love, but the ceiling on this is really, really high, and it does diversify your threats. So I'm gonna say keep it in for now. Likewise, Aetherflux Reservoir has the same kind of thing. It's also 4 mana. It also seems to benefit from a lot of your life gain cards, but I think it's fine by itself. It's just, you don't need to play bad cards such as Soul's Grace to make Aetherflux Reservoir good. Aetherflux Reservoir is just a good card. So if you play it, you'll just have a good time anyways. Bow of Nylea feels strange. Excuse me, that took me a few tries. It feels strange. Are you playing this to have basically a permanent source of food, right? Where you play this and every turn for 2 mana, you tap it and gain 3 life? Because if you are, that feels strange. I don't think this is good. Maybe I'm missing something, but generally the decks that have this want to use the Death Touch, and you don't need the Death Touch. So this feels like a very strange inclusion. I would probably toss it. Prowler's Helm is great. All right, looking really quickly at our creatures. I have a few. I'm going to see how long has this been. How angry am I at life gain? Ooh, a little bit angry. Okay, so let's go real quick on these cards, and then I will get into additions. Fangorn is here because it's Treebeard. That seems to be the only reason it's here. Remember this, you don't gain the green mana based on power. You gain the green mana based on the number of tree folk. Um, so with just Fangorn and Trostani, Trostani's a Dryad. There's one more. Where is it? As a root. So at most there's one more. So at most this can give about 8 mana if you have all your tree folk out. That doesn't feel particularly good. I don't think you should play this card. I know it's like a flavor thing, but I don't think you should play this card. This is a lot of mana for something that is not the thing you're doing. Also, Fangorn doesn't have trample, so you don't even gain the really cool part of like putting counters onto Fangorn. So I would not play this card. Nykthos Paragon is great. Felidar Sovereign, once again, a weird life gain card that I see all the time. I don't think you should play this, but I'll leave it to you. There's going to be situations where you just win the game because you have 200 life and you play this, and your opponents have used all their removal on Treebeard. So it's not terrible, but it's not a fun card. Maybe, okay, if you really want to play it. And then probably after you win once, you're going to want to take it out of your deck because you're going to realize, oh, okay, and then move on. So if that's what you want to do with it, I think it's fine, but I just I don't really see this as a fun or effective card. As a root channeler, feels interesting. I don't know, considering the amount of cards you have that are low mana creatures, it really doesn't feel like this does that much. Now, granted, I do understand this is mainly for your commander after it's been knocked to the command zone repeatedly, and you can, reduce like its own tapping reduces the command tax by 1, and then if you gain any other life, it just basically guarantees that Treebeard is 2 mana. It's a lot of mana. This is a 6 mana creature. That's just a lot. But it is a tree folk, so I'm just gonna let it be. But it is a lot of mana. Celestine's great. A little setup is required, but because it triggers every single end step, every single of your end step, I really like it. Trust Annie's fine. Silent Arbiter, I had to really think about it for a while. I guess the idea is that once Treebeard is big enough, you attack with just Treebeard, and only one blocker can block Treebeard, and therefore you're guaranteed to get the damage. But just play your unblockable cards instead. It feels really, really weird. It's also 4 mana, which is the same mana as your. Sorry, just closing the window a little bit. There's a very happy dog outside. Um, this just doesn't make sense. It's really, really clunky, and it kind of gets rid of some of the other things you could be doing with your deck where sometimes you're going to be able to have two really big creatures with Treebeard's power, and now you can't attack with both of them. I don't see it. I don't think this is good here. Lathiel is really, really good here. I'm really glad to see the inclusion here. This is your backup commander in the deck, and I really, really like it. I'm going to suggest maybe one more, with Nykthos Paragon being another one, and I'm going to suggest maybe one more after. Um, Accomplished Alchemist feels like a lot of mana for what he does. It's just a lot of mana. It is also the same mana of your commander, so I don't like it. But I recognize it does tap for a lot of mana sometimes. So I'm gonna be kind of 50-50 on it, but I would be on the side of being very cautious with this card. And then the last card I'm going to talk about and immediately transition into very quickly, I'm going to say sorceries and enchantments. Otherwise, are very, everything I haven't named over here, I love. Like especially True Conviction, Righteous Confluence, gain 5. Yeah, that's fine. True Conviction is obviously very, very good here. Overwhelming Stampede is very good. Damning Verdict is very good. All of these are nice. So the last card I'm going to talk about is Abzan Battle Priest, and I think this is a really good example of what I think is kind of the problem with this deck and how it's been built. So like I could just sum it up like the things I'm going to try to help you with into this one card. Abzan Battle Priest is 4 mana. So he's 4 mana, so he's the same cost as your commander. So it is just a bad mana cost to be playing around with. He is not very impressive, and what does he do? He only gains you life. Now that life is interesting because when you have this in play and you're basically Treebeard has lifelink, Treebeard is going to get really big really fast. But it requires Treebeard hitting. And at a certain point, Treebeard hitting is going to be enough. So you don't need to keep gaining life. The problem is not getting Treebeard, you know, big. The problem is getting Treebeard to connect. And here I'll give you my first suggestion, which is Abzan Falconer. Same idea, but you'll notice two things. One, this is a 3 mana card. So already it works better with your commander because it's not the same mana cost. And two, instead of giving lifelink, life gain in a way, something you have an abundance of, it gives flying. It gives evasion to your commander, which is so much more powerful. And I think you're just going to be happy with this. All right, let's go into other suggestions that I have. A few I have here that are pretty straightforward are a little more redundancy with a few of your abilities. Helioid feels like a necessary card in a deck like this. Once again, whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter. It works like your commander, which is really, really nice. It goes infinite with Scurry, where is it? Scurry Oak and one of your Soul Sister effects. It's just very, very good. You're going to have a really nice time with it. Absolutely recommend it. Another one, this one's much more expensive than I'd like it to be, but Archangel of Thune. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Once again, 5 mana. It's not 4 mana. She herself has flying and lifelink, which are two good abilities in your deck. But the main reason is whenever you gain life, your entire board gets a little stronger. This doesn't work with the giant packets of life gain, but it works with all of your passive life gain, such as your Soul Sisters, which is really, really good. Let's see. Next, just trying to pick which one I want to go to. Next, I think for more life gain, I think what I would like is having just a few more of our Soul Sister style effects. Daxos Blessed by the Sun, whenever one of your creatures comes in the battlefield or dies, you gain a life. Ajani's Welcome, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. There are a few more of these. I'm just putting these ones for now. I think these are the strongest ones because they will gain you quite a bit of life while being creatures you can put +1/+1 counters on, or blockers, or attackers, among other things. Remember, there'll be other attacks you want to make, for example, pressuring planeswalkers or keeping someone's health down, even if they aren't Treebeard. Another two things are cards like Voice of the Blessed, whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter, or Tressala. Oops. Trilacera. There we go. Also, whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter and scry 1. These cards aren't really interesting. They kind of just do what's on the tin. But in a deck like yours, they tend to get really big really quickly, and it doesn't hurt to have one or two of them. You're pretty low on creatures, and you have a lot of cuts of just life gain cards. You could probably benefit by putting one or two of these cards in here. Likewise, I do want to suggest one or two things that bonus, like either gain you more life or gain you more +1/+1 counters. Conclave Mentor feels like it fits here really nice, that whenever a +1/+1 counter would be added, you get an additional one, an additional life gain, an additional +1/+1 counter. This is a lot better with smaller life gain packets than big ones. But the other reason I'm suggesting this is for her second ability, which says whenever she dies, you gain life equal to her power, which can be quite a bit if you invest in her. Now, you can't put Treebeard's counters on her, but you can use your other ways to put it. Put counters on her. I don't know exactly to what degree I think this is good, but I think it can be good depending on the build. Likewise, Angel of Vitality is a lot more straightforward. It just says whenever you gain life, you would gain that much life +1 instead. Likewise, works better in smaller packets, but it's never a bad thing. Your foods now will be tapped for 4. That's it's meaningful. And when you play her, she's a 4/4, and she's really good to put +1/+1 counters on or give lifelink because she has evasion. Once again, not hugely important, but a nice touch. I didn't quite notice I had one more. Distinguished Conjurer is a new card that says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. Same idea. She has the benefit of being able to blink your creatures, which can protect Treebeard, which is not nothing. Which does make me actually a lot better, a lot higher on her, because the ability to protect Treebeard is pretty important. Finally, I have a few more suggestions of generally good cards. Generous Gift is another removal spell that I'd like you to play. Just really good at dealing with any card. It's Beast Within in white. You'll be very happy to play 2 copies of this card. Harmonize is some card draw in green. You don't really have a lot of card draw. You don't really need a lot of card draw because your deck is so redundant, which is really, really good. But still having Harmonize out is really nice because it will draw you 3 cards. Another card draw card that you should definitely be playing is Return of the Wild Speaker. You want it only for the first ability, and you got to get the timing right, because if you try to cast this and Treebeard dies, you're going to be really, really sad. But there's a lot of situations that this will draw you 10 plus cards really, really easily. So very good card, just be a little careful with it. And finally, my last card I'd like to add, which is, wow, really gone up in price, but Pathbreaker Ibex is just is overrun, or actually, sorry, it's Overwhelming Stampede on a creature. So every time it attacks, it will see Treebeard and distribute that amount of power throughout your entire board, which is just really, really good. And I think you'll be happier with keeping all of your smaller creatures around for when you can turn them into giant, giant creatures. Okay, so those are generally my suggestions. I feel like I spent a lot of time kind of critiquing the deck, and I don't want you to come across that like this deck is just awful or bad or like needs to be put down. It's just these are common problems of life gain, and I wanted to address them using this video. And none of these problems are unsolvable. They just require a change in card evaluation, a change in perspective. And the rest of the deck outside of those cards is very, very strong. So if you want to make another draft with some changes, get it more towards, try to get your life gain off of just cards that only gain you life. I think the deck will get. I'll blah 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 blah. Sorry, words. I would like to see that draft, and I would love to see the changes you make, because, like I said at the start of the video, I really like Treebeard Gracious Host. I think he's a very, very strong commander, and I think there's a lot of fun ways you can build him. You can go all in, or you can go and like go wide with a lot of different life gain. Now, I have suggested to you to go wide, but if you wanted to go full life gain, like all in on Treebeard only, there's a few things we can do here, and use some of these cards. Like Soul's Grace gets a lot better, but even then, I don't know how much I suggest that strategy. Treebeard can knock out one player really well, but it struggles to knock out the other two because after the initial surprise, no one's going to be fooled by it again. They're going to use all of their means to defeat Treebeard over and over again, and you're going to be knocked out of the game. Which is why I'm suggesting playing a nice variety of life gain creatures and life gain enablers and beneficiaries so that you'll stay in the game. But if you want to go full Treebeard, let me know and we'll try to build that as a different deck. It'll be harder, but it's definitely possible. When you want to send me the next draft of this deck or any deck, there is a link in the video description below. There's also a link down there to bring your deck to the front of the list, so it'll be the next deck I work on. And if, as always, if you could like, comment, subscribe, I'd be very, very happy. It's very good for the channel and very, very helpful. All right, this video has gone on a little too long, so thank you very much for sending the deck, and I look forward to the next one.